Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Baha Lecture Series. What number of you? 93 Baha Lecture Series. My name is Ajay Dikshit. This particular lecture is being organized by Baha in partnership with Institute for Social and Environmental Transition Nepal. I work at XCIII Nepal as its executive director. We also do some research on climate change, policies, water and disaster reduction. So I'm indeed very, very pleased to welcome Dr. Rishikesh Pandey. Dr. Pandey is Assistant Professor of Development Studies and Human Geography at Pokhara University. And he's conducted his PhD on the issue of climate change in the Himalayas. I guess you're going to look at more the vulnerability and the issue of adaptation, right? So much as to the challenges of adaptation we'll hear from Dr. Pandey. But I think, just as a preamble, let me reflect on the challenge of climate change. We just had the COP23 completed in Bonn, where according to some of the preliminary reports, just after the fact that the new US administration decided to pull out, it's kind of a new political dynamics in the negotiation process. And of course, if you look at some of the data on emissions, and if you look at some of the examples on what's happening with the atmosphere, you find out that the concentration of carbon dioxide has been much higher consistently over the last 1 year. It's about 405 parts per million. It was about less than 400 4 or 5 years ago. And that the temperature rise has been consistently much higher than what it was, thousands of years ago. So clearly there is a positive correlation between the emission of greenhouse gases and the increase in temperature of the global atmosphere, almost about 1 degree Celsius compared to the pre-industrial average. Now, having said that, some of the story from South Asia is equally a little bit of a issue of concern. We in Nepal are one of the lowest carbon emitters in the world. It's about, recent data would say it's about 0.2 tons per capita. But the annual rate of increase of carbon emission is highest in South Asia. We are higher than India, we are higher than Bangladesh, others. So clearly, even for economy which is not yet kind of beholden to the sort of a carbon-based economic platform, there seems to be a sort of a path dependency syndrome where we still are sort of going into the same sort of a path, irrespective of our commitment in INDCs and so on and so forth. Now, clearly for a country like ours, we could go into a zero carbon scenario, that's fair enough. It makes perhaps economic and political sense. But the global carbon content, the stock on flow, is going to be with us. It's going to continue to make the global atmosphere erratic and behaving differently, and as more gas is pumped. So clearly, what's your choice? Clearly, we have three choices as a humanity as far as climate change is concerned. The first is mitigation. Of course, as I said, mitigating or getting into a carbon neutral economy and future makes economic and political sense for Nepal, and perhaps also an ethical sense, not so much from the global carbon budget perspective. So that's That's one. We need to mitigate. We must mitigate, minimize the emission of carbon dioxide, because the carbon does make the weather system, larger climate system, erratic and behaving differently. We really need to adapt, and that's where the challenge. But it seems to me, given the diversity of the world, particularly in the developing world, not everyone in the developing world, perhaps even in developed world, would be able to adapt. So therefore, a lot would be coping. A lot would be sort of living with the consequences of the changes in different kind of weather pattern. Now, with this context now, Dr. Pandey will take us through his presentation in the Kali Gandaki River. The Kali Gandaki Basin, ladies and gentlemen, is a fairly diverse system. If you draw a transect from south in the Tarai all the way to Lumanthan, you will find out that it goes through valleys, etc., and then the 8,000 meter Annapurna range, and then on the other side of the Himalayan region, and then it encompasses almost all climates in the globe, except perhaps a desert climate that you see in perhaps some parts of South Asia, and the marine climate. And then very diverse, very different rainfall pattern, very different ecological niches, very different social systems. So clearly the consequences and the nature of vulnerabilities in Kali Gandaki River, or for that matter other basins in Nepal, will be very diverse. So without further ado, let's then pass it on to Dr. Pandey and then take us through your study and the presentation. We would like you to speak for about 45 to an hour. Is that fine? Yeah.
Targeting in 1 hour.
Okay, so when you are done with 45 minutes, I'll just give you a note and then we'll continue. Okay? Nah, great. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. And I would like to welcome you all in my presentation, and I am expecting to speak for 1 hour, and particularly under this content. This content is, seems to be a bit longer, as it's 4 years work, and I'm trying to cover up it in 1 hour. We all know that climate is changing and it's terrorizing the present world order. Still there are some people who don't believe in climate change, or especially they don't believe in anthropogenic forcing. Still there are many scientists who agree that anthropogenic forcing is the main cause. And in this research, I'm trying to see how people perceive how climate is changing and how its interaction with natural environment. As a geographer, we see society interaction between people and its nature. And within this periphery, I'm going to talk. First objective is to create interdisciplinary dialogue in climate change knowledge, how society and how climate change science or meteorological science perceive and measure climate change. And after that, I go for understand the implication, how society has been experiencing the impact of climate change. Thereafter, what sort of adaptation strategies they have been trying to do against the impact or to minimize the impact of climate change. There is an interaction that climate is changing, thereafter it's people are experiencing the impact and they are responding in some sort of way. And there is some sort of outcomes to this interaction, like change, impact and response. Among these three systems of interaction, now outcomes in reference to the socio-ecological vulnerability, livelihood security and food security is three forms of outcomes I'm trying to cover today. At the last edge, this is the PhD research. I'm trying to focus on sort of theoretical contribution in the discipline of geography and methodological contribution, what new sort of methodology I used And finally, I will suggest some of the policy recommendation to make the policy or climate adaptation policy effective. Now, just to check the time. Human ecological context or geographic context, how complex is Nepali livelihood system, in particular in mountain and Himalaya or Trans-Himalaya, we can say. This, I don't need to think, say too much about the interaction, but we have a complex system. Agro, livestock, together with cash income through PT business or labor migration or other activities, as well as service. But still, this, in this context, our livelihood system is very sensitive to climatic parameter or weather or geographic elements. Complex mountain system has been meeting big challenges and big variation within the small cluster or within the small spatial unit. In this context, global climate change, study of global climate change or global projection system cannot represent the Himalaya in well because of its elevation and relief-related issue or geographic issue. That's why within the existing knowledge, many researchers have identified some sort of impacts have been already identified in the Himalaya. For example, higher warming, higher rate of projection than the global average, and variation in rainfall, and erratic rainfall has been increasing since few decades. And in the meanwhile, we have a big mountain system in our first great rivers, and they have been experiencing snow avalanche related flooding as well as glacier lake outburst flooding. These Himalayan rivers are the life-giving system of the South Asia as a whole. And if some sort of bad implication of climate changes Himalaya is experiencing, that might cause livelihood challenge for the whole South Asia, especially south from the Himalaya. Extension of agro-biodiversity together with tropical crops have been becoming possible in the higher altitudes. And some researchers also included that climate change has already forced people to migrate, or environmental migration or climate refugees are going to be increased even from Nepal as well. And spatial variation within the rate of change is also documented by various research. In this background, to adapt, we have to either adapt or escape. If we can, we should adapt, whatever to adapt. If we cannot adapt, we need to avoid that type of weather extremes. However, while doing so, expert-list icon or expert-based knowledge are poorly translated by the people, or they are not sufficiently communicated with the people. Climate change are doing research by scientists, but their findings are not communicated with the community. In this context, I think these sort of research which carry people's opinion may be helpful to people so they can make their strategy better to adapt to climate change. And another important issue is climate change is not a sectoral issue. It's an integrated problem. It's not only giving emphasis for the particular element or climate itself or weather variable itself is not sufficient. That's why this research is trying to interlink various elements of social ecosystem in response to the changing climate. Limited research within considering the spatial variability and livelihood system of Nepal. That's why I generated this research. This research is conducted in 3 spatial locations, especially covering 3 different ecological zones of Nepal. One covers the Tarai, in micro level we say inner Tarai, but because of climatic and land surface feature, we can include Chitwan Valley Echatarai as well. And middle mountain is uncovered. Lumle is representing middle mountain, and Trans-Himalaya is representing, Upper Mustang is representing the Trans-Himalaya. Among them, I consider three particular problem, flood-related problem in Megholi. Megholi lies in between two rivers. They are the main drivers of flood. And third one is the same, Gandaki Barrage. Always in every monsoon, some sort of inundation problem is created by the Gandaki Barrage because of inappropriate management of Gandaki Barrage. That's why flood is the main problem of Megholi, while Lumle is the highest rainfall area of Nepal, and rainfall-related erosion and landslide are the another problem considered for Lumle. And in the Trans-Himalaya or Upper Mustang dryness, which is the lowest rainfall regime of Nepal, that's why this area is considered for the study. And I use triangulated methodology, means this try to triangulate positivist approach that analyze climate data or meteorological data, and thereafter that communicate with the people's perception. That means quasi-phenomenology or phenomenology, we can say. And thereafter, I use both secondary and primary data and mixed method as well as perspective, as academic perspective as well as policy perspective or action research. In this way, I'm using triangulated methodology. And at first, to design detailed methodology, I consider pilot study at first. We visited 3 locations and collected few data, and we present in a couple of conferences, like one in Adaptation Impact 2013 in Germany, and Adaptation Future in Australia. It was a national conference in Australia. After that, getting the suggestions from the expert, a detailed study methodology was developed, and again we can collect it data. And meteorological observation was, data for meteorological observation was collected for 40 years from 3 meteorological stations. One was in Rampur, another one is Lumle, and the third one was Johnson. And among the meteorological data, 6 rainfall related data and 4 temperature related data has been analyzed here. And for the people's perception and other information, 360 households has been selected from 3 different spatial clusters, and among them, almost 1/3, 29% were female-headed household as a respondent. Responses for people's perception was collected using Likert scale, unipolar. Likert scale mostly used bipolar, but I converted it unipolar, particularly because climate is already changing. That's why we should not ask about whether it is changing or not. That's why it is changing, but at what level you feel it is changing. That's why I consider 1 means very lowest level of change and 5 means extreme level of change. And people rated their perception in that 1 to 5 scale. And that scale was later on transformed into the Gottman scores. That means the Gottman scores generalize the whole response in a single category. And in field methods, we collected data from group discussions as well as key informants interview. Thereafter, historical timeline calendar was also collected from the elderly people or senior people. People of the community draw crop calendars in different locations, and observation and field notes were also taken at the time of data collection. The rate of changing is measured using line city statistics in Excel, and the linear regression analysis and man-Kendra was performed to verify to measure the significance of change. And the first objective, interdisciplinary dialogue, how climate science is looking, the change, and how people are perceiving it. Climate is changing. This extreme maximum, and minimum, and extreme minimum, 4 temperature-related variables, they are increasing, but not all are statistically significant. These red colors are the changes per year. These are the significant one, and black one are the rate of change, but they are not significant change. It means maximum and extreme. Lumle has, Tarai has the, or Rampur has the, all temperature are changing significantly. In middle mountain, extreme maximum and maximum is changing or warming faster, but minimum temperature is fairly same, not changing very fast. And how people think at that time? In the same context, rainfall is not much changing as a whole. Annual rainfall is not changing, neither the rainy days nor the total rainfall. But extreme rainfall events, especially in Lumle, is changing, particularly for the extreme rainfall events of more than 50 millimeter in 24 hours, or extreme rainfall events of more than 150 millimeters in 24 hours. They are significantly increasing, and others are just changing a little bit, but they are not very significant. And people's perception, how people see it. Intensity of drought is increased, like these are the variables how people are thinking. And I think it's almost all variables what we have asked, people have understand or have perceived these changes. And in the temperature, people's perception, most of the temperatures are increasing and are fairly significantly in statistical test. And in reference to the people, summer and winter temperature are increasing, but normally spring and autumn are fairly similar. It means extension of summer and extension of winter leading to collapse of spring particularly. They are not finding spring season as well as fall season. Both Nepal is whole annual period is divided within the summer and winter. And extreme minimum temperature in winter is decreased, leading to increased temperature range in the Trans-Himalaya and Tarai. It means both temperature range between summer and winter temperature is also increasing because of the increased extreme rainfall, extreme temperature, extreme minimum temperature. No notable changes in rainfall and rainy days as per the meteorological data, but people notably see or experience the decreased rainfall and rainy days. Now, how it happens? It means people's definition of extreme rainfall is different than the meteorological definition. Meteorology takes some sort of threshold, but for people, extreme means the level of impact. If impact is higher, even the rainfall is less, then people say that is extreme. But meteorological data doesn't see about the impact, but the quantity, how much rain has been received. This means the meaning of rainfall, extreme rainfall, is different for the science and society. Increase in extreme rainfall events as well as floods. Change season, nature of precipitation, and onset and retreat of summer monsoon. People see these are different than the climate data has said. This all what explain is nature of precipitation. Earlier people used to summer means rainy, light rain for several days, like 4 or 5 days, and within the one rainy season they used to experience 3-4 of short type of rain period. And later on now they see 1 or 2 days of heavy rainfall, thereafter rest of the season goes dry. Or within the summer, they experience 1 week or 2 weeks of dry period. This means extreme rainfall is increasing, but nature of rainfall or summer season has been changing. So in the same way, retreat of summer monsoon means summer monsoon has been arrival and withdrawal has been very variable. It means almost 1 month is variable. Sometimes comes very early and sometimes goes in very late. But people perceive that as a delayed monsoon or changed monsoon. But actually science doesn't prove that monsoon is changing. This is the, I'm not sure if you can read, these are the elements. If this perception is variable with some sort of social dimensions, like gender, age, study cluster means study area, and landholding classes of household and economic status of household. But in perception, we see that highly significant issue is place or geography or cluster. But other elements are not that much strongly associated with perception of people. Overall, from the summary of this section, this is a dialogue between climate science and society. The climate system is changing, and thereafter respondent increase uncertainty in weather pattern. Respondent mostly prefer annual, interannual variability. Thereafter perception are often determined by the recent events. For example, 2003, 4, 5, 9 and 10 has late onset of monsoon. That's why people feel that monsoon is delayed. And communities define monsoon differently than that of the meteorological science. Microclimatic elements not having meteorological stations in the study area and localized weather pattern have produced contradictions between science and or observed and perceived climate. Perception contradicts to observed change is that not toward the north but toward the south is changing faster or in a higher rate. Heterogeneous Himalaya respond global change differently, so area-specific or location-specific study in climate change are very important. Based on these experience of or perception of climate, now we discuss about what sort of resources are there that people are making their livings. This livelihood system is assessed using 5 livelihood capitals. Within these 5 livelihood capitals, over 100 of variables have been asked. All these variables are categorized into 5 livelihood capitals, and each of the variables are transformed into the index using max-min method. Max-min method means the difference method this study uses analysis, unit of analysis is a household. Up to now, there is no study that is considered household as a unit. Many study compares spatial cluster like Lumle versus Nagoli or like that. Within the livelihood studies, many people compare districts or VDC or other elements. But this study is, I say, socio-ecological unit is a household because people use all sort of resources available within the socio-ecological system. Each household has different access to and control over this sort of resources. That's why they are the single unit of social ecosystem itself. That's why unit of analysis in geographic research should be household. And that's why this method is utilized. And in the summary, we consider, for example, human capital index is equal to 3. Labor force. Labor force, within labor force there are several elements. In the same way, 5 livelihood capitals index has been developed, and that livelihood capital further transformed into livelihood sustainability or vulnerability index. And summary of this livelihood system assessment or analysis is that there is a poor human capital. the poor level of education and skill, high level of dependency within the household, labor-intensive occupation, health problems associated with both climatic and non-climatic stressors making human capital weak. That's why it's not sufficiently contribute in livelihood. Inadequate social capital in terms of quality. Many have social relations, but the quality in the sense of material exchange required for the support. They lack that resource. That's why social capital is also weak. Household ownership of only small farm plots and the lack of entitlement to exploit forest research, because these study areas are under the conservation and park area. That's why they are not sufficiently allowed to collect forest-based livelihood resources. That's why natural resource is also weak in the area. And economic poverty of household limits the accumulation of livelihood capital. Household lack a stock of money and convertibles. Therefore, high population of livestock is also decreasing because of the feminization of agriculture. And all these are making economic resources weak. Finally, despite the owning of house, the house they have is not strong enough to protect them from extreme environmental or extreme weather events. But you know Nepal's situation about the public infrastructure and government social security service, which are very weak, or they cannot compensate the private property or private livelihood resources when required for the people. In overall, this is the situation. All livelihood resources are weak for all area, and the middle mountain is the weakest one, or poorest one. Overall status, no one assets can compensate the weakness or poor status of another. That's why livelihood system is sensitive to climate change. This sensitive livelihood system is impacted to existing social ecosystem. Yeah, this is the social-ecological implication now. Here you can see in the picture, this seedling has been already suffered from cracking, and this is a tarai, and these are the barren fields which are left, which used to be a egg farmland earlier, but now going to be, these are the seasonal fallow, but there are more than 60% farmland has been abandoned in some parts of Nepal within the Kali Gandaki Basin. And this study also finds that almost 40% of farmland of the Lumle has already been abandoned. And the third one is the flood, high sedimentation in irrigation infrastructure. Like water of Upper Mustang, it's a very, it's a high siltation amount. Suspended particles is a lot. That's why people cannot maintain the irrigation and water supply infrastructure. This is the big problem in Upper Mustang. And overall impact, these are the people's opinion. The work of new track is opening in the Upper Mustang. That is not considering the environmental sensitivity of Upper Mustang. This has been making a big soil erosion and landslides. And in the meantime, rainfall has been increasing in the Upper Mustang. That is creating further runoff. It used to be a snowing area, but recently snowing area has been changed for rainfall. Snow used to melt slowly and create a small runoff, but direct rainfall creates the heavy runoff and erosion-sensitive land features of Upper Mustang is highly affected. Major floods in 2003, 7 and 11 in Modikola damaged over 800 Ropania farmland in Lumle. And it's normal to lose 40-50 households every time they shift from their permanent residence to safer area in Chitwan. In this way, farmland has also been transformed into the river course or barren land in Meghalaya. In the same way, the delayed onset of monsoon often causes maturity of seedling, and when that mature seedling is transplanted, rice production is declined. Even the rainfall is better after the transplantation. And in the same way, over 70% farmland has been remained fallow in winter in Lumle. Dryness has increased problem of farm pests and farm weeds. We have never experienced such a landslide, flood, and active stream and rivers like we are seeing recently. Afghanistan people saying in this way. Further, the pattern of hailstone occurrence have been coming. So while the hailstone in 2008 and 12 caused almost 90% losses in maize production, the size of hailstone are so big they peel off the pear trees and damage water tank. People say this way. Death of livestock and human due to thunderbolts is also increasing. They have reported some 3 cases of death of human and dozens of livestock death due to thunderbolt. This is the response of socially perceived impact. These rate as the highest level of impact, particularly increased invasive species, new disease in livestock and crops, and new insects, extended habitat shifting upward, thereafter periods of water shortage increase, and annual life of water sources decrease. These are the major impact among the social ecosystem due to climate change. These are the same. These are normalized value. Earlier was the raw value, and this is normalized value. And further is in earlier perception, we tested the association of different social variables and perceived level of impact. Here too, we see particularly study cluster has the highest level of impact. Association and economic status means better of household has better of adaptation resources. That's why they feel relatively less impact than the household those doesn't have a sufficient resource to adapt. Women experience relatively higher level of impact. The gender and age of respondents as well as land holding size are not much associated with household, but household economy is in some level. Better adaptive capacity decreases the perception of impact. Geographic environment of a place implicates into the people's perception. Now, after experiencing this sort of impact, how people are responding to this impact, I'm going to talk about this. These are some of the efforts they have been making, particularly Gaggian construction and concrete construction, and flood control dikes and retaining wall. Thereafter, this one is in Afghanistan. They are making concrete construction to control floods. And the status of adoption, we asked almost around the 33 strategies if they have adopted in this last 10 years. And the adoption of strategies is quite weak. These are the normalized value. The values they have, the strategies they have relatively adopted better are like increased irrigation, regulated use of water, thereafter increased agricultural inputs, thereafter changes in livestock type and size. After that, added heating cooling facilities. Pray to God, when they find nothing to do or cannot adapt, they surrender to the God. And migration is the most important. This means they try to earn cash through migration, and that helps to not directly adapt to the climate change, but that helps to maintain household livelihood system. That's why they are adopting migration. And these are the people's adaptation barriers within the mapping system. Within the these three different systems, different group, all these 31 variables have been grouped into the 7 groups in the status of normalized value. We can see that mostly afforestation, the highest one 63, 51, 43, change got varieties, thereafter increase irrigation, thereafter agro trading, increase agro input. These are the major strategies they are adopting. And in reference to the changes in climate system, they are trying to adjust crop calendar. This is the crop calendar of different locations, and red represent the input in the past and black represent the present. It means mostly they are not sure. Crop calendar is variable, highly variable. Sometimes they try to adjust with weather, but it is not clear or it is not linear. That's why they are not sure. If I start chilling now, if rainfall is not occurred in time of transplantation, thereafter seedling will be mature. In this way, they are confused because of the variable rainfall pattern. In the same way, they are trying to adjust with the weather pattern, but failed, mostly failed. That's why crop calendar is reported to be one of the best strategy to adjust with change, but this is not very effective in Nepalese context. And here we see particularly land holding size and VDC or study cluster as the most important variable they are associated with adoption of strategy. Land holding, either better holding might be encourage people to adopt agro-livestock related activities or strategies. And economic status is also the relatively high level of association. This means they have some sort of resources required to adapt the strategies. These are the same way economic status and geography and land holding. At the last, gender is very important in adoption of migration. It means the people who are available to go abroad for the work, then women get the responsibility of maintaining household. This means higher proportion of male migration means higher responsibility, household responsibility for women. Or women get a double burden, both maintaining household head and maintaining that regular gender-based work. This means they are performing cross-gender roles. These are the adaptation barriers people have reported. A lack of adaptable variety. Climate is changing, but they doesn't have the adaptable variety with a dryness or heavy rain. In the same way, poorly developed or unsuitable crops. Mainly people are using hybrid varieties, but they are not developed in reference to the climate change, but reference to the high yielding. And people are using these high yielding as adaptable crops, but these are not actually the adaptable crops. And lack of irrigation, there is a problem associated with actually in Upper Mustang there is no source or difficult to maintain the infrastructure. In Lumne there is no source, and in Tarai there is a policy problem that people need to consolidate some 4 bighas of land or like that, 25 bighas of land to get compensated deep boring, and many people who can afford or who can consolidate this form of this size of land has already been starting irrigation, but poor people who have many small patches, they cannot consolidate. That's why they recommend for at least 4 bighas of land should be made as a threshold to provide compensated irrigation facilities. This way, irrigation and resource conflict is not that much big. The major problem people are seeing are lack of short-term and long-term weather forecast. If people have long-term information about weather forecast, they can develop their strategies. And financial limitations, yes, people are poor, that's why they cannot adapt. Insufficient adaptation knowledge, they are not sure whether the strategy will produce positive result or that produce maladaptation. That's why they are confusing. Lack of support from NGOs and government of Nepal are also the adaptation barriers they are reporting. These are the summary of the same. And poor level of adoption of strategies, however, rich adaptation knowledge. Almost all these 30 strategies people know. And lack of social learning. Even some households are practicing, but this knowledge is not transformed. Neither the person who is adopting is feel responsibility of transferring knowledge, or the people who are not adopting want to learn from him or her. This means there is knowledge gap. Communities are undecided to adopt strategies because they perceive it is not linear. They don't think that this change goes for a long term. And few of the strategies are preferred by women, while others are by men, but there is a significant association in selection of strategies. Variable scope of agricultural agro-livestock activities in different ecological zones is making variation, spatial variation in adoption of strategies. After these 3 elements, change, impact, and response, what sort of outcomes has this interaction created? I'm going to talk about this. In the sense of food and livelihood security. Very fast. Food and livelihood food security is measured in these 4 elements, but as Nepali food security study doesn't consider stability yet, probably because availability and access issue has not been well addressed. That's why these utilization and stability may be some sort of irrelevant. And this study particularly goes in 3 sense. Availability in the sense of self or household production, access in reference to the household budget, annual budget to buy food, and utilization and stability, or all these outcomes is measured through HIFAS, Household Food Insecurity SS scale. This scale has 9 questions for the previous month, and these 9 questions are people rank 4 response. 0 means no deficiency, 1 means 1 to 3 food lacking or meal lacking in a day or in a month, or 2 means little bit higher level of deficiency. This means 3 to 10 meals lacking in a month, and severe deficiency, more than 10 meals lacking in a month. And by measuring that method, by using that method, we find food insecurity in study area. For example, self-production based data says that Lumle is the highest food deficient region. These red one are the highest level. Still, other places also have food deficiency. In terms of budget, the people are trying to maintain food through cash income. It means you can compare that. It's 75%, 16 and 39 was sufficient in terms of self-production. Now it's increased to 81, 75 and 56 in difference to budget sufficiency. Still, there are many people who doesn't have who have negative or deficient budget to fulfill household food. And in terms of high-fast or household food insecurity excess scale, the people, this level of people are experiencing different level of food meal lacking in a month. And this is fairly similar with the relatively little bit higher than the Nepal Living Standard Survey national ratio. National ratio, I think it's 8% or some level of people are experiencing around 10 meals in a month. But this shows that relatively 8% around people are experiencing food deficiency in this study area. Season is the most important element in food deficiency in Nepal because of the seasonal characteristics of agriculture. And now this is the seasonal pattern of food deficiency. You can see that post-harvest and pre-harvest season. Pre-harvest are like post-harvest season are relatively secure and pre-harvest are relatively big. And there is a intra-household variation. Intra-household variation, you can see Karai has relatively intra-household variation, and historically Lumle has a higher level of deficiency and Upper Mustang has general level of deficiency. And this food deficiency has been tested using different household characteristics, and these say that Meghalaya has a highly correlated. Lumle doesn't have much correlation with the household characteristics, and Upper Mustang also doesn't have a big correlation. Shen applies in the different livelihood capital index, the food sufficiency status in reference to the high-fast scale. Now, socio-ecological vulnerability. The main target of this study is this one, which is the new one. It's not, I think, now there are some publications. Until I did this, this section has been published in Applied Geography in 2015, and many people are recognizing this is innovative work. And this used socio-ecological vulnerability index measured in the sense of three parameters: exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. And for this collected all the variables, I transformed these variables in three different ways: representing exposure, representing adaptive capacity, representing sensitivity. And thereafter, the exposure index, sensitivity index, and adaptive capacity index is developed. And finally, social-ecological vulnerability index. And this also used the same max-min method, which is used in human development index particularly. These are the variables, very long, many variables have been used. I think I won't go in the individual name. In the SBI range between -1 to +1. The -1 means least vulnerable, and +1 means most vulnerable. And these households are classified into the very high level of vulnerability, moderate level of vulnerability, and little vulnerability, or least low level of vulnerability. The protection shows that, data shows that in exposure context, very high number of households are exposed to high level of exposed to climate change, and both high and very high represent almost all. And there is a household level variability within the cluster. There is a variation in the level of exposure. In the same way, sensitivity is higher. Very high is low, and higher category is high, and medium is also low. Therefore, this is also variable in household context. And in the same way, adaptive capacity is low in for almost all households. When exposure is high, sensitivity is high, and adaptive capacity is low, it automatically says that people are suffering from vulnerability. And these three indices are transformed into this way. Now, socio-ecological vulnerability, high level of vulnerability, medium level of vulnerability is relatively less. And in all the households are socio-ecologically sense, they are vulnerable. And overall, among the comparative analysis, Lumle is the most, or Middle Mountain is the most one. And here, some sort of variables are self-reported variables are used. That's why Trans-Himalaya is better, because the adversity is their way of life. That's why they don't refer or recognize themselves or this adversity as a problem. But people of Lumle has a higher expectation. This means they feel lacking, lot of lacking. That's why they are higher level of suffering. Now, theoretical contribution, what these have did. Actually, I use sustainable livelihood approach and system approach. These are driver, pressure, stage of change, impact, and response. These two approaches I try to create interaction between people and environment using these two frameworks, but neither a single framework is sufficient, strong. That's why new socio-ecological model has been developed through this study. And that study recognizes both endogenous and exogenous factors or stressors, and demonstrated how different components of socio-ecological system interact with each other. Integration of SLA and with the system approach DPSIR can be successfully substituted by socio-ecological model for climate change adaptation continuum. And while doing this sort of framework is developed. Like perceived and observed change, exposure and sensitivity, livelihood capitals, DPSIR change, and people's endogenous and exogenous factors, and adaptive capacity. Better adaptive capacity produces sustainability of system, and weak adaptive capacity produces vulnerability of the system. This system further goes in this way. Not sure if you can read. These are the findings. Small letter are the findings with the same variables. And what sort of the status of Kali Gandaki Basin. And this I just made a slide for this to demonstrate a little bit bigger context. And in all, people do not wait to respond, wait to the impact to respond to the events. Sometimes they start to respond within the driver's stage, sometimes they go for impact stage, sometimes pressure stage, sometimes response stage. But DPSIR often say that people respond only after the impact. But in reality, people doesn't wait. Based on the experience of last year, they can prepare before the driver comes. This is the way. That's why DPSIR or system approach is not sufficient. SLA always feel that outcomes of interaction is sustainable. But that is not sure in the context of climate change, because we are not sure if the adopted strategies produce positive result. That's why mixture of or integration of these two variables or the two frameworks makes adaptation continuum. Yes, this is the final adaptation learning: action, reflection, communication, and negotiation, and this goes in this way. Original system and expected system, adaptation of strategy, maladaptation. If the positive result doesn't come, goes to vulnerability. Now, theoretical further, this is demonstrated the strength of the geographic discipline, how geographers see the world, and complex phenomena using integrated framework. Integrated vulnerability assessment acknowledged important social and environmental elements to answer the question, what to adapt with, who should adapt, and how to adapt. This means social ecosystem of Kali Gandaki Basin is vulnerable, that needs adaptation, and how to adapt means adoption of strategies or socio-ecological, making socio-ecological system sustainable. This research also developed a socio-ecological model to explain what is and what ought to be the relationship between society and environment. What is relationship is vulnerable right now. Now expectation is sustainable. This is what ought to be. Social-ecological concept is developed or originated from the sustainability development thinking. That's why it's advocate for the development with harmony with nature. Not sustainable, that is economic perspective, but sustainable is harmony with nature. This means this sort of adaptation strategy is required. Methodology, developed and applied an integrated hybrid, or we say triangulated methodology, that is conceptual, transformative and practical problem solving tool. Establish interaction between scientific and social understanding of climate change to provide strong policy feedback. Recognize household as a unit of analysis having their one unique socio-ecological system. Evaluate multidimensional accessibility, availability, access, utilization and stability to measure food security. A holistic examination of exposure, sensitivity and adaptive capacity to assess socio-ecological vulnerability. Now I'm going to talk about policy implication of this research. An important tool for the adaptation decision making, policymakers as it offers policy option to prioritize assistance. Based on the age this research created household-based vulnerability index. Based on that index, they can develop target policy for sectoral as well as for individual household. This means we know that during the earthquake, many people complain as per the social media review for me. I was not here. Some say that they get multiple times resources and some face the gap in this recovery and immediate coping strategies. This means if state has this sort of index, then people, state mechanism directly can go to the most vulnerable household at first, then gradually to the less vulnerable household. This means this system provides this option. Integrated and participatory model of adaptive co-management and comprehensive socio-ecological governance that links scientific findings with social governance. Scientific findings without transforming to the social benefit is not very relevant. That's why this is very important. Advocates for local adaptation plan of action, LAPA, using needs-based adaptation and adoption of integrated in situ and ex situ adaptation methods. Quest for political will for the comprehensive welfare through climate resilient development plans and social protection mechanism. In specific, I recommended 3 plans. One is risk and disaster management policy for human security and welfare, design and implement hazard prevention protection strategy, establish and practice early warning system, assist community with contingencies and emergency planning, and provide knowledge and awareness on climate change, its implication and long-term adaptation initiatives, functionalize and strengthen local council. Earlier the election we have recently, so now it's in way. Still, the roles for disaster management is very important. Ensure human security and social welfare and strengthen people's life. And in sense of agriculture and livelihood diversification policy to create food security and livelihood security, diversified livelihoods. I prefer or I recommend for not continuing the OBOP. One village, one product. What I have observed is people or farmers lose food sovereignty. When they don't have one production, they need to depend on others' production. Others' production, like just few days earlier, I read some sort of vegetable 12 rupees per kilo in Kirtipur, and in I think 40 rupees in Kalimati, and 120 rupees in household nearby shop. This means the neither the producer are benefiting nor the consumer are benefiting. Middlemen are benefiting because of ODOP. And this should be discontinued in some sort of Nepal. You mean to know? Thereafter, adoption of social-ecological perspective in adaptation. Adoption of socio-ecological perspective. Efficient use of agricultural land use and water issues, provision for technical support for land management and land use planning, agri-ecological restoration. As I already said that farmland abandonment is becoming a very serious issue. We need to make a policy to reclaim this abandoned farmland. And the final one is policy recommendation, climate change mitigation policy for socio-ecological sustainability. So why NAPA was not prepared under NPC? It was one of the questions I myself asked to policymaker. It's not a sectoral issue, it should be integrated planning, and integrated planning can be made only in National Planning Commission, not under the any ministry. That's why NPC should initiate this action. Where has LAPA gone? There, NPC has, NAPA has said the provision of LAPA, but LAPA is not in action. That's why it is one of the most important policy. That's why LAPA require more attention that is not getting. Conclusion, the final slide. The study comprehensive, this study studied a comprehensive, analyzed human environmental interaction using an integrated framework and methodology that accommodate location-specific elements of the compound interaction. The higher level of exposure and sensitivity but poor adaptive capacity of system to climate change push the household socio-ecological system towards the vulnerability with higher severity in middle mountains. Integrated adaptation policy would increase the resilience of socio-ecological system. I would like to thank you for your attention. I need your queries. And further, these are the people I would like to acknowledge while doing this research. And one of the, Patan is here. And you can access parts of this paper is published already. These read are recently accepted, but the final stage of publication. Others are already published, and you can access them from my research website as well as from other sources. Thank you. Now I would like to request others to know
okay.
Queries.
Thank you. Oh, okay. I'll help you. Don't worry. I'll help you. Or paper, Dada. Can you give me a paper? Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you, Pandeyji, for a very, very comprehensive presentation. It shows, the extent of work that you did in your, PhD enterprise. Very, very comprehensive. Perhaps you try to bring in a range of issues, starting with science, starting with people's perception, the whole question of food, and then to look at the whole notion of vulnerability and adaptation, and then to come up with some conclusion and suggestions for policies. Clearly, it's not an easy task, given the scale of the basin, and the fact that the climate change science is still evolving, that we have huge data gaps, and then the models, the computer-based circulation models do not tell us what's going to happen in the future. So clearly there is a conceptual limitation, we have limited historical data to figure out how climate is changing. Say the usual practice is we start at 1970 and then we end at 2015 and we draw a line without understanding what's happening before 1970 or what will happen after 2015. And the model gives based upon assumptions, very, very different results. So therefore, for somebody trying to figure out what's going on, it's a huge conceptual and methodological challenge. But nevertheless, it's well done. Thank you very much. I will have some comments later on at the end, but then I'd like to open the fourth floor questions, and then Prakashji. We'll take a couple of questions first, and then we'll get Dr. Pandey to respond, and then we'll come back again.
And the area that you have studied is one of the most touristic areas of Nepal. You have trekking tourism, you have wildlife tourism in the south, the Lumle area. You have trekking tourism, and you have pilgrimage tourism, and now you have rafting tourism in Kali Gandaki Basin itself. So what has been what has been in your study, what has been the impact of climate change on tourism in this area, and what policy measures would you recommend in general also, although you did say in general about to mitigate the impact of climate change on tourism.
All right, okay, next. Could you please also introduce yourself?
Your presentation is very nice and comprehensive one.
Your introduction, please.
My name is Purnamantapur, student of economics. My question is that is it related with the earthquake or not? The climate.
Relation between climate change and earthquake.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Jayendra.
Jayendra from Nepal. My question is related with the fallow land that you talked about in the Middle East, the increasing fallow land. You simply mentioned that that needs to be addressed. But should it be addressed at the policy level or at the ground level?
Okay, let's have three, then you respond and we come back again. Okay, you have three questions. The first is, the area that you studied has a lot of touristic activities. In the hills, pedestrians and backpackers. You have rafting. You have in Meghalaya, safaris and others. So how would climate change affect these different sectors of tourism, and how could you go about mitigating or adapting to the change? That's number one. Second question by Sar was, is there a link between climate change and earthquake? Okay. And the third one, you talked about fallow land. So the question was, how should the problem of fallow land be addressed? You said it has to be addressed. So the specific question is, should it be done by policy or at level? How do you address these questions? So three questions.
Thank you for your queries. In first, the tourism related, these three study clusters itself. Earlier, I was not familiar if Lumle and Upper Mustang I was expecting that tourism could have a better contribution for livelihood system, but later on I found that Meghalaya is also practicing Homestay tourism has been initiated while we were in field, and we also stayed in this homestay tourism. And in livelihood system, there is economic and occupation related variable. In detail, data are presented in that, but livelihood system just summarized in a single variable. These are incorporated as a form of cash income, and tourism is significantly contributing, and around, I think, 8% household are earning some sort of money from the household entrepreneurship like tourism and other. This means tourism has a big contribution. So this study bases not selected in reference to other elements, just three elements: meteorological elements, dryness of Trans-Himalaya, as it is the most least rainfall area. Lumle is the highest rainfall area, and flood-prone area of Nepal. and within the Kali Gandaki Basin. I think this is the way the study is selected. Another is earthquake and climate change. There is a question. Socio-ecological vulnerability index can be used to respond climate change post-disaster response, but I don't think there is a direct relationship between climate change and earthquake. But still, there are some, recently there are some research findings that human or anthropogenic contribution in earthquake. These are particularly associated with mining, and second is this large-scale dam, water reservoir, and
Fracking.
Yeah, particularly this large-scale reservoir makes heavy weight in particular location, and in the same way, the mining and quarrying makes vacuum, and it makes existing plates or weight, maintenance of existing weight for the plate disturbed, and that's why that is causing some sort of earthquake. People say, and some research has how this 2015 also associated with mining in India and large dams in China or something. Some people say still, but that is not very strongly proved. But climate change, up to now, research doesn't show relationship between climate change and earthquake. And in reference to
The fallow land. Fallow land.
Farmland fallow, it's within the fallow is about restoration, or what is the question?
The question was, the lots of land have been left fallow.
Yeah,
And
it's
how do you bring it back?
or define.
No. How do you bring it back to production?
Oh yeah.
At what level we do
You
that?
mean policy response.
Policy
How
or
we
no?
can, how we can reclaim.
Yeah.
We have not. I have not recommended for how we can do. I'm still now for the research agenda I have created, and I'm trying to find some sort of research funding and communicating with to detail study. But for me, what I think is the fallow farmland can be intervened from policy, and that policy can provide incentive. First, we need to make land use planning, and after that land use planning, certain land should be allocated for agriculture, certain land, based on this planning, we can continue, give incentive to the people who reclaim this land. Better policy could be, people in Nepal, I can say that, के भन्छन् भन्दा उनीहरूले तपाईं किन रिक्लेम गर्नुहुन्न, कहिले कसरी युज गर्नुहुन्छ भनेर भन्दाखेरि जहिले विदेश बन्द हुन्छ भन्छन्.
When the migration stops.
It means when people or policy restrict to go away or restrict to labor migration, then there will be reclamation. People go opinion. In this sense, that people are looking for easier way to earn cash. Cash is becoming more important. And another is farmland abandonment is associated with increased cost of production, and that cost of production is not covered by the farm production. And another is, we say we are rich in forest, and this community forest is getting momentum, big contribution, but that is becoming big issue for the wildlife encroachment in the farmland. And that's why also people are abandoning. These can be reclaimed if forest policy is made a little bit soft, so people can harvest the forest product in a sustainable way to support their livings. Thereafter, they can earn some from forest and some from farmland. And if people increase the intervention in forest, then we can expect that this both invasive species could be reduced, and in the same way, intervention of or encroachment of wildlife in farmland could also be reduced. Now, अहिले के भन्छ भन्दा वनमा बाघ बस्छ, बाँदर जति हामीसँग बस्छ, वनमा बस्न नपायो. This means tigers has occupied the forest, but monkeys are becoming a day-to-day life or neighbors of the human settlement. That's why people are abandoning the farmland which are nearby or in transition with the forest area. This is in this way, if we make integrated plan and for forest and agriculture, maybe I think reclamation is possible.
Another round of questions, yes, you.
I am Dhanesh Thapa, Senior Researcher at NDRA. I also do some climate change related research, and what I find problem during the climate change research is that how we define the adaptation strategies. While we define or identify the strategies, it seems like sometimes they are like the coping strategy, or sometimes they are like some changes with the opportunities of market and other kinds of the opportunity that has been created there. So how you define these and identify those adaptation strategies, whether they would adaptation strategies or not?
Good.
One thing, and another is that recently the vulnerability definition has been reconceptualized by IPCC. So what is your view on that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. Yes, I am Lotmandeep Lohani from Nepal. I am researcher there. My question is about adaptive capacity of a community. We know that temperature is rising every day, daily basis. Let's say a community has adapted some mitigating measures to fight against that change, climate change. And we, as I said before, temperature is rising every day. Now, if that community has already adapted some mitigating measures, now that rising temperature, that climate change, which is still going on, is it going to affect the adaptive capacity of the community?
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, let me say the first is, this is also a question that I have for you. First is, you talked about adaptation, but you didn't seem to define what adaptation means. What does it mean to adapt? Okay, so if I understand you correctly, right? That's one. The second question is, this whole vulnerability index that you've used, it says there has been a new method or approach that IPCC has been putting forth. You know, the whole vulnerability index that you talked about, IPCC has been using a new method. So what's your comment on that? That's two sets of questions. The second question is, temperature is going up, and then people have taken some measures to respond to or adapt to that rising temperature. So they have taken some measures. If I understand Ratna correctly, if the temperature continues to go up, then they have to use new methods. They have to change their strategy. So what's your comment on that?
Thank you for the queries. And adaptation, yes, definition. As it faces, we have a big chapter about a theoretical discussion about adaptation. How this definition I haven't included here because of the time. I thought that I cannot cover in 1 hour. So actually, what adaptation I define here is that first of all, there is two elements, coping and adaptation. Biologically, adaptation is a different thing. For biological scientists or we say that still adaptation is the term started from the Darwin, but we don't use that Darwin's philosophy of adaptation. We use social-ecological system, interaction between human and environment as adaptation strategies. The action people do immediately to cope with a particular disaster or particular driver, we say that coping, short-term action against or to reduce the loss. And adaptation is relatively planned for relatively longer period. There is no definition of period, but based on last year's experience, farmers can plan earlier before starting the season. This means last year I lost this amount of loss because of this event. That's why I need to care about this event may happen again, and I need to protect my farm or production this year by doing this. For example, last year dryness caused problem in germination of some sort of seed. People may cover up it by mulch or by plastic sheets, or even last year they suffered from hailstone, means they try to search whether they harvest earlier or later of the harvest season. This sort of, not fixed, but some sort of plan people make, and these plans are as a response to weather elements or weather events. We define them as a adaptation strategy. Actually, these are the, not in the sense of Darwinian concept, but in the sense of interaction between people and environment because of the driver and impact, experience of impact, social learning of impact. They make some sort of strategy to respond to them in the belief that same sort of driver may occur again. Strategies.
Temperature माथि गयो हैन. Temperature's gone up, people respond. Temperature still goes up. What do people do?
Yeah, this is still science says that the problem is we are responding. Still, temperature is going up. It means at least for 21st century, whatever mitigation strategy we make, unless big carbon capture, big project for carbon capture, we cannot control climate change, at least for 21st century. It's going, because there is that much of carbon already in the atmosphere, that is already released in that amount, that is continuing to go. That's why our recent immediate is adapt now. Not with mitigation is second strategy. First, adaptation is very important. Then we can mitigate for later on 21st century or 22nd century. It means if science and technology develop a big technology that can quick collect the carbon from the atmosphere, at that time we may see the control of warming within our life. Unless, I think we cannot, we need to experience the warming. And that's why we need to design a strategy to adapt to growing climate or warming or increasing extreme events.
Right. Any more questions? Yeah.
Hello. My name is Dalbor Satpal, and I'm teaching geography in Sainik College. My question is, as you have mentioned the vulnerability of different livelihood assets in different geographical regions. My question is, in different regions there has been a change in the perception or let's say the value system, like we can say economic value or sustainable value, or we can even say ecological value. But even after the climate change that has been taken in different geographical regions, is there any positive change in the value system, like let's say ecological or economic, or even let's say sustainable or even agriculture system? So there may be some positive changes because of the climatic change. Here we have been talking about all negative changes that have been taken by the climate change. But do you see any positive changes which has brought about by the climate change in the value system?
Any more? All right, we'll take that as the last question, and then
The question is, we all talk about positive.
Positive contribution.
positive consequences.
Yeah. The climate science is also claiming that climate change is positively implicating in temperate and cold climate areas, and negatively implicated in warm temperate and tropical areas. And in the sense of Nepal, particularly, we have seen some of the positive implication in upper mountain, or it means Trans-Himalaya, not in the middle mountains and in the Tarai, but in Trans-Himalaya. People are saying that Trans-Himalaya has been greening in recently. It means there is a higher scope for livestock ranching. Still, people are abandoning livestock ranching because of the high demand of labor. Because now they practice transhumance, but recently people doesn't have the skillful people who can maintain transhumance practice. And another issue is the Trans-Himalayan wage has been increased too much. That's why they cannot pay, or that is not very beneficial. That's why livestock population is decreasing, and transhumance practice is also becoming rare. That's why these positive implications are not benefited for the household. For in ecological system, they are definitely benefiting. And another issue is that growing period is increased, but that is not sufficient for the another crop. Few weeks, like at least 2 weeks has been increased, people say. 2 weeks is not sufficient for the annual crop, so that's why they are practicing some sort of vegetable or kitchen gardening in upper mountain, which used to be, which they don't used to practice earlier. This means there is a small period available for another crop, or the crops are becoming better, producing better. Like apple size are becoming larger, they are tasting better, and in the same way, grain weight is also increased based on the people's perception. There is no scientific measurement, but in Trans-Himalaya, positive impacts of climate change has been reported. And another in the livelihood strategy, particularly people have changed. This study also measured climate changes in food security status last 10 years, and now this change has not been printed today, but one paper is coming in the last year. The Livelihood Journal has published this change. And livelihood security in the sense of market access is increased, but in the sense of production availability, household production is decreased. In the same way, contribution of agro-livestock activity in overall livelihood is decreased, and cash-based income, particularly remittance, is highly increased. These changes have been observed.
Good, thank you very much. So let me then, make some observations and comments, and hopefully it should allow you to pursue this whole nexus or interrelation between socio-ecology and climate change and other stressors, in a much more perhaps engaged and interdisciplinary way. I'm trained as a civil engineer and then a water engineer. As I started to look around water, I started to look into this whole dimension of human geography. I started reading Gilbert White and others, and I do work with human geographers now. And then some of the concepts that we have used is something that we have used in our work. I have done extensive study in Gandaki Basin. You looked at 3, we looked at 6 sites, and clearly lots of the findings resonate, but then lots, kind of do not. The assumptions are very, very perhaps different. And that's the challenge perhaps, given the scale of the basin, looking at 3 hydro-ecological regions and then to generalize at the scale of Gandaki Basin perhaps is a little too risky. But then, as a PhD exercise, this is fine. But then, as a professor in department in Pokhara University, you can pursue this inquiry much further because you are stationed in the Gandaki Basin, right? Just a couple of comments. The first, I think, is this whole question of vulnerability. If you look at vulnerability literature, you essentially find 2 strands. One essentially says this index-based idea of assessing vulnerability in a more positivist sense is fine. But then there is the countervailing view which says no, the structural embedded vulnerability is more important. So therefore, you really need to look at what's happening at society, household level, perhaps even within the household. And then everyone tends to say, oh, my method is best, so therefore you pursue that. But none is that, we take the approach of saying, each have a benefit, each have a point, but then vulnerability is dynamic, it is context specific, so therefore you cannot have one-time vulnerability assessment and you can say things are all fine. No. So it has to be a process, so therefore this idea of negotiation and conversation, which is the emphasis of your study, the whole interdisciplinarizing conversation is your entry point. So I think that's sort of matches with what's going on. The other point I think is, when we were doing climate change research way back in early 2000, when we started this idea of adaptation, this question emerged: what does adaptation mean? Do we go to this Darwinian, notion of adaptation, or that's more due to climate variability? It's not anthropogenic climate change, by the way. And we came out some kind of a very simplistic way. We say, all right, we all deal with stress in human life, right? So if you face a constraint, if you face a difficulty, and if you have capacity to change your strategy and do well, okay, that we argue is adaptation. And we say adaptation and coping are two different things. Coping is not doing well. You sort of live, in a water, you try to sort of, stay over the water, and then sometimes you may go down. But then adaptation is to switch strategy and then do well. And that switching strategy or the disruption might be caused by a hazard like climate change induced floods or drought, or it could be earthquake, or it could be some other stressor, right? Just other points on this planned and autonomous adaptation. We've taken planned adaptation as something that you can attribute to climate change. For example, sea level rise, where you can say some direct contribution of how climate is changing. If you look at Harvey, Irma and Maria, the study shows in a preliminary way the Atlantic Ocean's temperature rise contributed to the increasing frequency of hurricane in Atlantic. But in climate change, as you very rightly pointed out in your study, it's not that direct. That causal relationship between climate change and independent or individual weather event is still very hard to come by. So therefore, the whole idea of planned and autonomous adaptation could be necessary. What you defined as planned adaptation by farmers, I would term it as an autonomous adaptation. And we can continue our conversation and debate on that issue, okay? Let me end by, first a story on monkeys, all right? You go to the village in mid hills and many places, monkeys are a menace. And the place is village called Pokhara. Monkeys essentially, trampling all the, sort of harvestable crops. And then the local farmers started to throw them, the peel of oranges, The monkey takes it and then starts to take it out, and then it sort of throws out this juice and it damages their eyes and they go away. But then they're very, very smart. They don't do it in front of their eyes, they took it back and take it out, So that's what the farmers told us, and they said, Ajay sir, no climate change. Tell us, how do you deal with monkeys first? That's our immediate challenge, that's some of the story. You talked about that, tigers and monkeys. And now let me make some observations about Napa and Lapa. I tell that because I was involved in both. Of course, Nepal was the last country to prepare Napa. It's National Adaptation Plan of Action. We're one of the last countries. I think we're the third last. Because we're the third last, we had an advantage of doing slightly better work. And in fact, compared to some of the earlier Napa documents prepared by other countries, LDCs, Nepali Napa is a bit better because it was consultative. It went into these different transects in the east, in center, in the west. It did bring in very different stakeholders. It had 6 thematic areas. Now, I would argue with you about whether it will be better done by MPC or Ministry of Environment. Of course, the Ministry of Environment doesn't have a cloud and so on and so forth. But then, to some extent, it did try to sort of, it could have been done better. But at least it did try to, bring some of this perspective, science, social science, so on and so forth. But then, it also had vulnerability assessment. And Kaski, where Lumle you said was vulnerable at that micro level, Kaski is designated as a moderately vulnerable district. So therefore the question of scale is very, very important. At what scale you go to work, at what scale you assess the impact. that's why this whole process of continuous vulnerability assessment is important and where it should be located. That brings me to this issue of LAPA. I think what you say in LAPA is not right. I was involved in designing LAPA. It could be done very differently, but there is currently an ongoing program by Government of Nepal in Midwest and Far West VDCs where LAPA is being implemented. You could question how it's been implemented, how it's been done, etc. But it's not that LAPA has been disregarded. So in some sense, yes, there was a national plan, there is also a local plan. So when you look at the discourse in late 2010, when the NAPA was being prepared, we were all involved, and there was this, we have had so many national plans, we need to have some local plans. So therefore there was some policy resonance and there was some change, so therefore that was done. On specific details we could talk, and I hope you have read some of the literature that we have produced on climate change, right? Okay? The literature that we have produced, our what? Have you read? Anyway, then we will sit together. We'll sit together and we'll talk about some of the things that we have done since 2000, 2002, 2003. But anyway, Dr. Pandey, thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your work. As I said, it's a journey. PhD is not an end. As your senior, I can tell you, PhD should tell you what you don't know. Alright? You should say, I don't know, and then you must pursue your knowledge, your inquiry, and then build on that. Hope you do that in Pokhara and look forward to see you. And then before we end, I think we have this small memento that we would like to give you.